According to the National Park Service, a cultural landscape is a geographic area, including both cultural and natural resources, and the wildlife or domestic animals therein, exhibiting other cultural or aesthetic values. These landscapes often have physical components that reflect their customs, beliefs, or values. The physical features affect patterns of spatial organization, land use, circulation, vegetation, structures, and objects, which then affect the customs and everyday lives of the people. Cultural landscapes reflect the multi-generational ties to the land of a certain people. Today, we are going to discuss the cultural landscape of Newfoundland. The Canadian Encyclopedia describes the island of Newfoundland, highlighting that the west coast is dominated by the table-topped Long-Range Mountains. The northeast coast, with its numerous bays, islands, and headlands, fronts on the Atlantic Ocean from the Great Northern Peninsula to the Avalon Peninsula. Newfoundland's southern coast has the deeply embayed characteristics of a submerged shoreline. The inland areas of the island are generally hilly and rugged. Shallow bogs and heath vegetation covers much of the land. Most of Newfoundland's towns and cities are located in the bays and coves of the island's west and northern coasts. The island of Newfoundland is part of the Appalachian system and displays the typical southwest to northeast alignment in its major bays, peninsulas, river systems, and mountain ranges. Rocks are more varied on the island than in Labrador. Continental drifting was followed by frequent periods of crustal deformation, interspersed by long periods of erosion and deposition. These events have combined to produce a variety of rocks of different ages. Because of the moist climate and plentiful snowfall, the water table is high in all areas. Lakes are usually full and rivers flow perennially. There is naturally some seasonal fluctuation and occasionally very wet or dry years, but water shortages for domestic or industrial use are rare.
Much of the Newfoundland lifestyle has been influenced by the location of the town. It is fairly isolated, but a surge of settlers has made it the functioning island it is today. Before then, though, there were indigenous people living there that are now forced to live on reserves. Many of them live in small, crowded houses. Their space is limited, which leaves a lot of room for the lifestyles of the people who immigrated to Newfoundland so many years ago. The current people of Newfoundland have structured an economy that relies mostly on fishing, mining, and extracting oil. Because these industries are not necessarily money makers, cost of living is generally low. CanadianVisa.org has given us access to some of the numerical stats. The average price of a home is only 236,000 Canadian dollars. To receive a higher education, it is typically only 18,622.87 Canadian dollars.
The Newfoundland and Labrador travel site highlights the unique aspects of the languages that the people of these places speak. There are more varieties of English spoken in Newfoundland and Labrador than anywhere else in the world. Dating back 4 centuries, the accents are rooted in Western England and Southern Ireland. There are also French and Indigenous influences that have helped shape their colorful language. Since Newfoundland is often secluded from many parts of the world, the multitude of dialects and traditions that have long since evolved in other countries remain preserved in Newfoundland.
As we discussed, language is an important part of Newfoundland's cultural landscape. Because of its close location to the United States, many of the words that are still in its language are actually ancient U.S. vocabulary terms. Also, interactions with fishermen played an important role in influencing the Canadian town's vocabulary. Here's a few that we learned from George Patterson's article, Notes on the Dialect of People of Newfoundland from the JSTOR database, that we think are pretty noteworthy.
Learning how transportation in Newfoundland has evolved throughout the 20th century is key to know your way around. In the 1890s, the Reed Newfoundland Railway, popularized as the Newfie Bullet in World War II, became a tremendous advantage to travelers in getting from one end of the province to the other. But in 1968, the railway closed down due to the growing popularity and use of the Trans-Canada Highway. The number of motor vehicles in Newfoundland and Labrador made more than a 900% increase, and the amount of paved roads went from 121 miles to 1,168 miles. Want to reach Newfoundland? Nowadays, arriving in Newfoundland, many newcomers will arrive via St. John's International Airport. Not a fan of the sky? No worries, there are other options to arrive via car or ferry. Checking out the Newfoundland Labrador website, there are routes to reach Labrador from the mainland of Canada via Quebec by car, or take a ferry from Nova Scotia to either Port au Basque or Argentia to reach Newfoundland. Once in the province, there are a number of options to get around, from using public transportation, choosing private cars, or being eco-friendly via cycling. Taking a tour of the island is marvelous. Whether by sea, air, or land, the journey to Newfoundland is a worthwhile adventure. In Newfoundland, the Cape Spear Lighthouse is a National Historic Site. Standing for over 2 centuries, it is home to the oldest remaining lighthouse on the island. With an amazing view of the earliest point in North America, you'll be the first to see the sun peak over the horizon. Another destination is Signal Hill, a unique landscape made up of an elevated lake, mountainous cliffs, and bays below. As Newfoundland was originally settled by Indians and Inuit Eskimos, the island's official discovery was made by Europeans in 1497. The site of military battles and technological triumphs, Signal Hill commemorates John Cabot's official discovery of Newfoundland, who claimed it for England. Aside from the historical landmark, the North Head Trail is Signal Hill's most popular and most difficult hiking trail. At 1.7 kilometers, it takes about 90 minutes and descends 500 feet. Talking about hikes, Mistaken Point is more than 4 miles of jagged, narrow coastal cliffs where 10,000 fossils are tucked into high-hanging ledges that were once part of a seafloor that would have been found much closer to areas of South America and North Africa had the continental plates never shifted. A story that is 565 million years in the making is accessible only through a guided tour. The UNESCO World Heritage Site contains the world's oldest known examples of large, architecturally complex organisms, including soft-bodied ancestral animals. Newfoundland is home to various attractions, so get some outdoor exposure with a range of architectural buildings, lighthouses, and monuments to visit.